Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Mubashir Altaf, and I am PhD scholar at Air University. And I want to present an article and commentary on the article, which belongs to the domain of cognitive poetics. And let me introduce the title of this article. Into the future of their makers, a cognitive poetic analysis of reversals, accelerations, and shifts in time in the poems of Eavan Boland. So the author of this article has taken the poems and the poetry, the poems of the Eavan Boland, an Irish poetess, and analyzed this from the perspective of the cognitive poetics, and especially the time and the shift of the time has been traced from this work. Because when we read poetry, we experience the time collapse in the poetry, because in the poetry, this is a separate space. It means we enter into that kind of the world. This is the text to word. This is the space where the past, we move from the past to the future, from the future to the present, and present to the past. So this frequent shifts of time we experience while reading literature and the poetry. So the author has looked this piece of literature, selected piece of the poems by Eavan Boland, how she gives the experience, embodiment of her own writing experience, which she put into her poems, and how these embodied experiences are a kind of, we can, when we read the poem, we re-experience those experiences, basically. So what is the introduction? I have highlighted a few of the areas of the research paper, so we can talk about it. So introduction, in this chapter that follows, I intend to examine the theoretical crossing points between the new mobilities paradigm, which is given by the Schaller and Urey 2006, text world theory, that is basically given by the Wirth in 1999, and later on it is modified and expanded by Gavins 2007, and the Stockwell's model of literary resonance. So we can see here that the author actually taken the poems of the Eavan Boland, but the author looked at that poem or analyzed, or for the purpose of the analysis or cognitive poetic analysis, the author actually blended the three different types of concepts, basically. The three different theories, this is the blend, this is the framework where the author draws from different three sources he has taken. So for example, this is the new mobility paradigm has been used, and the text world theory has been used, and the Stockwell's, the concept of literary resonance has been used. So the three things are mixed here, and the author formed his her own framework to study the time shift and the other worlds, the literary world or the text world experience. So in order to generate a framework through which the reversals, accelerations, and the shifts. So reversals mean going back in the time, and acceleration means the experience of the time, the fast experience of the time, and the shifts in the time, in the present, the future, and the past, and experience of the different words. In time, the work of the contemporary Irish poet Eavan Boland may be effectively analyzed. So several of the Boland's poem contains challenge of the temporal or the spatial normality in order to make wider points about the nature of the reality we remember and re-experience it. When as a reader, we read the poem, actually we re-experience many things, which this is the bodied experience, basically, which is put into the poem. And we, as a reader, when we read, we re-experience those embodied experiences. Not only experience, but also we enter into the world of the text. There are positive words, negative, and sub words are also given by the framework. So I will begin by outlining the new mobility paradigm and following this with the brief outline of the text world theory, Stockwell's model of literary resonance, in order to show why they may be effectively combined as a theoretical framework which can be used to address imaginative movements and mobile sense making. This is followed by the analysis of several examples, some conclusion drawn from those analyses. This is the structure of this article, where the author is going to, first of all, give the brief introduction of the three of the framework, three of the theories, basically, from those sources which has been used as a framework. So there are three sources. So he is going to introduce a mobility paradigm, then the text world theory, and then Stockwell's the idea, the concept of resonance. Then I will. The author has given two or the three poems analysis, but I have selected only one example as a presentation for the presentation. So this is the structure. So first of all, we enter into the new mobility paradigm. So according to the Schaller and the Urey, mobility's research is primarily concerned with the pattern, timing, and causation of the face-to-face co-presence and the observation of the ways in which people may move. So paradigm emerged from the social sciences and has developed outward in a wide variety of the disciplines, including anthropology, geography, and sociology. So this paradigm, which has been initially used in other disciplines, for example, anthropology, geology, sociology, and geography. So Schaller and Urey presented the mobilities paradigm, how we experience shift and the time shift and the patterns and the timing. So this is developed by the Urey and the Schaller, and the author has taken this paradigm for this present study. So next part of which I have selected for the reading is that this suggests that this approach can also lead to the questioning of our linear assumptions about temporality and how we experience the narrative of events through the effective vehicle of our corporeal bodies in order to construct emotional geographies as we move through the make sense of the world. So how we, when we entered into the world of the text, how we re-experience those experiences, embodied experience, which the author has experiences, and how we make sense of the world, basically, how we explore the emotional geographies, basically. This is, these are the terms and the jargon, especially the cognitive poetics. So such of the definitions, interspace may apply to the medium which facilitates imagined meeting or imagined travel by acting as the interspace between the imagination of the sender and the receiver, the written text in the literature, for example, and also to be imagined places on the move, evoked by the text in the mind of the reader. So what happened when this paradigm, this kind of the theory says that reading, talks about the process of the reading. While a reader reads poem, actually he or she enters into an interspace. This is the another world, another text world, where this is the imagined place, or where things move differently than the actual world. So this is the re-experience of the reading. In this way, the work of literature can function as an interspace. So work of the fiction or the literature is now has been taken as a different space. So there are different rules, there are different parameters which facilitate the meeting or the journey that would not otherwise be possible, and facilitates the connected co-presence of the reader and the character and the reader's journey into the text as the text is realized, both in the sense of being understood and in the sense of being made real in the mind of the reader. So what happens in the mind of the reader here, the researcher wants to explain that when he reads the poem, actually enters into an interspace, and this is another world where the meeting of the author's mind and the reader's minds are collaborated, basically. And the Urey talks of the inhabited machine, giving the example of the mobile phone and individual televisions as machines, which reorder Aristotelian time-space relationships. So Richards, in the preface to the principle of the literary criticism argued that the book is a machine to think with. So he compares the book with a machine where we think with, because when we read a poem, basically the processes happen in our mind. So this is a machine which triggers our thinking process and think with those texts, and we experience things. I would argue the extent to the poems too. If this is true, I believe that it is then they too are inhabited machines. So the new mobility paradigm is a part intended to undermine existing linear assumptions related to temporality and the time. So general assumption are our real example, day-to-day world experience of the time and place is very different. But we enter into the world of the poem and the world of the literature, that experience of the time and the place, that is totally different. And we experience the time which is the past. We can go into the time of the future, and we can experience the displacement. So we experience different places at the time zones. A poem is a cohabited vehicle containing a poet and the reader in a discourse world, which permits virtual and the mental travel to other places at the time in the act of imaginative creation and the recreation. So when the poet reads and when the reader recreates, actually, those spaces and those times, and so the reader enters in the world of that particular discourse with the reader, with the author's mind. So there is a kind of time travel, and that is interspace, that this is a book as a machine which actually transports us into another world, and where we experience time and space differently, basically. So as readers moving through a poem, our normal experience of the time can be challenged by the sudden temporal shift and the reversal. So normally we can't go back in the time, or we cannot experience the future time. But while reading, we can experience this sudden shift of the time. Maybe that are the reversal of the time. This is we experience the future time. So such challenges can foreground the relationship between the temporal ordering of the elements that poem presents and the way the poet has chosen to represent them. So this is the mobility paradigm. Mobility paradigm. And next is our cognitive poetic framework. We actually talked about now the text world theory. Text world theory was developed by the Paul Worth and has been further amplified in the recent years by the Joanna Gavins, while Gavin's version of the literary reconfigures several aspects of the verse's original structure, particularly in relation to the way departures are seen as operating. The basic theory remains structurally very similar. So both versions include the text world, which is reader's mental representation of the world, and is built and is using information contained in the world. So there, two authors are mentioned here by the researcher. Originally, this text world theory is basically presented by, the idea is originated by Paul Worth, and later on, Joanna Gavins worked upon it and expanded it and a little bit modified it, although basic principles were the same. So both versions include the text world, which is the reader's mental representation of the world. So what is the text world? This is the reader's mental world, basically, which this is the book's third space, basically, built up upon using information contained in the text. So the main structural difference in the West and the Gavin's version of the theory are apparent in how they deal with the reader's imaginative movements from the main text world into the other worlds. So there has been the different lies between the two versions, how the other worlds associated with the main text world, how different words are associated. This is the difference between the two versions of that theory. Gavin actually given the different type of the words and their features. So Worth positions these movements at the level below the main text. This is the words concepts, basically, and refers to them as departures into subwords. So he assigned the other words. So in a sense, he assigned hierarchy, basically. There is a main word, and there are and then subwords. And when the reader reads the poem, or that any literature piece of literature, he enters a departure from the main word to the subword. These departures are classified according to three main types. So deictic, attitudinal, and epistemic departures. So there are three a subtype of the departures are there are three main classes. Deictic departures are initiated by the movements in time and space. So time and space movements is basically the deictic departure, and attitudinal departures offer representation of the character's thoughts, basically, and intention and belief. And epistemic departures are engendered by the propositions that are hypothetical, counterfactual, conditional, and otherwise modeled. Gavin version of the theory. Now look at this is the basically a worse definition of the text world or his classification. And now we look at the John Gavin's version of the theory, which resists this notion of the hierarchy by using the terms world switch, which are equivalent to the words deictic departures and the model worlds, which reconceptualize attitudinal and epistemic departures in terms of the three types of modality: deontic, related to the duty or the compulsion, and bolemic, related to the wishes and the desire, and epistemic, concerned with the perception of the truth and the hypothetical and the conditional worlds. So that is the difference between the two. She does not present the hierarchy, but he presented the on the same level, the reader enters into a different world. So given Gavin's model in the terminology indicates that the world being switched to, or the world expressed by the particular modality, can exist at the same level as the main text value and does not have to be subordinate. So she abolishes the basically subordination of the words or the hierarchy of this structure, and given the idea of other words. There are words, different words, but they are on the similar plane. Because Gavin's version of the theory removes the hierarchical aspects with regard to the main text world and other words that arise in the text, this also has important consideration for how metaphor can operate with text world theory. As we process metaphor, both are representation of the originating text world and the other words created by the metaphor remain active in attention. This means that we may produce a blended world at the same level as the originating world, and readers process these text world at the same time. So these are the concepts added by, given by, or modified by the John Gavin into the primary concept of text world theory given by the Paul Worth. Now we come to the third notion of this blended framework, which is a resonance, concept of resonance. In his model of the literary resonance, Peter Stockwell has adopted Cartesian idea on how additional foci may be established in mode and applied them to the informed literary readings. In Cartesian's terms, figures may be thought of as a positive blobs possessing edges that are processed simultaneously as a part of the shape. In the same way, negative blobs consist only of the edges and the focus attention on the gap or the absence. This gestalt processing can be extended to the structure of the unstructured collections of blobs. So structures like children in the class photo or the herd of the animals are perceived as a connected or contiguous. Likewise, attentional foci can change through processes that signify apparent motion shift, means shift. Changes in the apparent size, means zooms, are through sudden appearances or color change, and changes of the state, basically. So textual and the Stockwell's model of literary resonance act as complementary way of analyzing the cognitive effects of the imagined movements in the time and space, which are created in the mind of the reader by experience of the reading a literary text. Text-to-world theory offers a way of analyzing and structural relation of the various words within a text and identifying the linguistic cues and structures that cause them to come into being. What Stockwell's model adds is a way of seeing these structures and movements between them in dynamic relation through the monitoring of that attentional focus and how what changes and why it changes as the reader progresses through the text. Now, next I want to read about this article is that the text-to-world theory offers a way of approaching the spatial and the material aspect of the imaginative movement and mobile sense-making, while the resonance model offers a way of integrating and temporal aspects of the spatial and the material to produce a deeper and the more three-dimensional and analytical model for understanding the sense-making mechanism of the reader as they imaginatively travel through the text. The following section shows this framework in action by applying it to the number of the examples drawn from the poetry of the Irish poet Eavan Boland, whose work is widely admired for its vision in making the personal political and representing the female experience, and so for the use of the tropes and which are related to the metamorphosis, transition, and the sometime illusion and absence. So Arthur mentioned and analyzed a few of the poems written by Eavan Boland, an Irish poetess, which she presented as personal and the political relationships, and there is a female experience also. So, but I have selected only one poem and the example for the clarification. So let's move for the analysis. This is very important and heart of the this article. In her Petrarchan sonnet, is it still the same from the collection code? So the sonnet has been taken. Is it still the same? His collection is the code. Boland uses a series of the questions beginning with the run on title to create in the mind of the reader affirmative and negative version of the resulting text word. So when reader encounters the poem, the very start of the poem is start with a question. So with the question and the series of the question and other imaginative areas created by the later lines, and when the reader enters into this, at the same time, affirmative and negative text words. While at the same time populating with both versions of the same world building elements, as we can see from the title and the octave of the sonnet quoted below. The title contains the pronouns it, which is anaphorically ambiguous at this point, and since it cannot be resolved backward because it is right at the beginning of the point, and the reader must attempt to resolve it further. Because is it, the question is very start, so we cannot go back. We have to resolve this question, or the meaning of this question, or what it means, and what kind of the world it is. Where should move mentally, negative world or into positive world? It depends upon the coming lines. Basically, we can go further and find the relation of those questions. So, young woman. Let's read the poem. The blonde poem is still. This is a sonnet. This is the first part. Young woman who climbs the stairs, who closes a child's door, who goes to her table in a room at the back of her house, the same unlighted corridor, the same night air over the wheelbarrows and the rain tanks, the same inky sky and pin bright stars. So what happened in the poem is this initial interpretation is fleeting, however, as the it of the title is soon resolved as the young woman of the line 1. So we assume though who the it is. Basically, it is the woman, which is explicit in the line 1. The set of the question which began with the run on the title, which extends over the first 8 lines of the poem, open 2 geminal, the twin epistemic words created by the potential for affirmative and negative responses to the question. There are epistemic model words because they relate to the potential beliefs of the speaker and the reader of the poem in relation to whether the world building elements described are the same or not. In one epistemic world, we imagine it is still the same young woman who climbs the stairs, closes a child's door, and goes to her table, a room at the back of the house to write. And in another epistemic world, we imagine it is not the same woman. The reader, since they cannot know which of these geminal epistemic text world is true, is invited to hold both possibilities equally active in the mind, whether he should enter, or a reader might enter into the world of one side and another side, and the positive and the negative. So he holds the both of the words options in his mind. So reader at this point cannot be thought of as imaginatively inhabited both worlds. This, of course, goes against the reader's normal corporeal experience, but may also suggest to them the opening up of the imaginative possibilities that the physical world does not allow. This is in turn makes the poem the inhabited vehicle through which the reader undergoes this imaginative transition. So this is not possible in the actually real world, but when you enter the world of the literature, world of the poem, there are possibilities of entering into different world or holding the option of going into simultaneous worlds. At the same time, in focusing the reader's attention first on the action of the young woman and then introducing these new questions related to her environment, the reader's attention is disengaged from her and moved to the various attractors which emerge through the action in the question. She is subject to decay as a figure, while the action in the particular of the environment are drawn forward in the intention by the being zoomed in on, in the process becoming figure separated from their ground. So the reader constructs the identity of the speaker of the poem as Boland herself, because in the absence of any information to the contrary, we tend to assume a deictic center for the reader, for the speaker as I, now for the narrative voice, which worth takes by the convention to operate in a discourse world. In the affirmative epistemic world, the reader constructs the idea that the older Boland watches her younger self in her memory, performing these actions. In the negative epistemic world, the reader must believe that the older Boland imagines herself are watching another young woman who must therefore be a generation below Boland, undertakes the same action that Boland herself had done. In both of these worlds, there is a tension between what is possible, likely to the real world, and what is possible in the imaginative world. Is it not possible in the real world to be physically co-present in the act of the observation of an earlier version of the self, but one can imaginatively do so quite easily? Because these things are, actual experiences are very different. But in the poem, we can go back in the time, we can imagine, we can see ourselves from a distance also. We can imagine different person also. There are different possibilities. When the reader reads the poem, um, he can enter into different words. From line 9, after the Volta Boland enters a different phase of the poem, the negative, you can see nothing for her, teases the reader using the ambiguous pronoun you. So let me read the remaining part of the poem. You can see nothing of her but her head bent over the page, her hand moving again, and her hair. I wrote like that once. But this is different. This time when she looks up, I will be there. The poet focuses on the bowed head and the booming hand of the writer, but the head bowed in the act of writing obscures the identity of the young woman and maintains the indeterminacy instigated by the questions as a attractor in the poem. In line 11, the poet observes, I wrote like that once. The deictic word switch into the past originates from both the affirmative and negative version of the text world. This may be taken either to the reinforce the perceived identity between the younger and the older version of the Boland, or as a more general observation that she had faced the same challenges. The comparison maintain the twined aspect of the text words prevents the decay of either and reinforces the indeterminacy. So these are the selected parts. This is the analysis of the point 1. There, the author has given another poem and their analysis, but I have selected only one. So this text world diagram, is it still the same? This sonnet and this figure 4.1 shows the text world. So here we can see the text world 1, when Boland assumes as a speaker I, here now, and this is the negative version of the text world. And on the right side, we can see the affirmative or the positive or the affirmative version of that text world. And this is the past version of the negative. This is the future version of the negative word. And here is the past version of the affirmative and the future version of the affirmative word. So these are, this is the text world. This is the negative version. This is the affirmative. And affirmative, where we can experience the present, past, and future. So the poem serves as an inhabited machine with Boland uncannily both present and absent, both as the writer of the poem, present as voice, but physically separated from the reader in space and time, and from the woman she observes. She occupies different text words. She is a character in her own poem, the embodiment of an absence, of an observing presence. This is an important aspect of the poem. The watching figure we take to be Boland as an empowered figure, privileged as observer, able to move imaginatively between words, and able to dictate what the reader sees and experience in her role of the narrative mediator. She exemplifies the powerful and the privileged position of the poet a position too often denied to women writing in the Ireland during Boland's formative years, but one that Boland shows is achievable now, for which she can serve as a guide. So I have selected only the one poem and its exemplary analysis so that we can understand the gist of the article well. So we have now reached at the conclusion. So far we have seen the basic introduction, the structure of the article, and then he blended the three uh, different notions and forms. The author formed his own framework, then he applied on the bronze. Two poems and one has been presented here. This is the cognitive poetic analysis and different. This is the text words and its relation to the poems, how we experience the poem mentally, how we experience the time. So as we have seen in the example, analyze Boland's use of the twin text words can be both startling and potent, making the reader both see and feel the effects of the imagined journeys and juxtaposition of the past and the present and the different enactors of the same character within a single space. As Boland put it in an interview, what she says, where poetry excels is as a method of expression, not expression. She says poetry is not expression, but this is the experience basically. It has a unique capacity to render an experience in a fresh, unsettling way. I don't write a poem. I don't write a poem to express my any experience, but to experience it again. So this is the concept of the poetry given by the Boland. According to her, this is not the expression of the emotions or expression of the self, but actually this is the expression of experience. So writing and reading the poem mean re-experience those experiences. Basically, those experiences are again based on the body physically or embodied experiences. This quotation demonstrates that Boland sees poetry as a way of collapsing temporal and spatial boundaries in order to place both the poet and the reader in moment that and to the re-embody remembered experience in order to experience it anew and to change how the experiencer thinks about the experience. Poetry is a cultural practice that allows the mobilization of a changed context to re-experience and to change experiences. It makes the familiar strange and the strange familiar. So attributed to Coleridge. And later on, it is given a new term by defamiliarization by Victor Shklovsky, I think. Applying a cognitive poetic framework constructed from the textual theory and the Stockwell's model of literary resonance allows us to track the reader's progress and the processes through the text and rigorously analyze the linguistic cues and the mental spaces activated at different times. So the framework provides a way to describe, analyze, and understand how poetry collapses boundaries between then and now and between here and there and making them co-present. So all the boundaries of the time from the past, future can be collapsed in while reading. We experience the past and the present simultaneously. We can enter into the world of the author's created words and the positive and negative words also. And we can violate normal experience of the space also. So it draws out the mechanism by which the poem operates as an interspace where the meetingness is facilitated, the function as an inhabited machine, which though it workings has the potential to problematize the very nature of the presence and the absence, distance, and proximity. This is that was the conclusion, and this is the whole presentation. And these are the references which are at the end of this article. Overall, we can see this article present the Boland's poems from the perspective. This article basically analyzed the Boland's poems from the perspective of the cognitive poetics, and this is how the reading process occurred. Here, the author blended three concepts together, especially the text-to-word theory is the center of this, and he takes the poem as a machine, or that is a meeting place of the author's mind and the reader's mind, and how the reader's mind enter into the text world and experiences those experiences basically which are infused by the author, and she put her own physical experiences, which are body's experiences, into the poem, and the reader definitely when reads poem he or she re-experience those experiences which are put into the poems. So this is the cognitive poetic analysis of the poems, and this is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.